Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to game number 12 of the 1886 World Chess Championship held in New York City, the United States, between Wilhelm Steinitz and Johannes Zukertort. Now, in the previous game, Steinitz took a 1-point lead after losing 4 games in a row at some point, so he's completed the comeback, and now he's up 5-4. So he'll be looking to extend that lead with the white pieces, whilst Zukertort will be looking to either stabilize, or he'll be looking to tie the match again in this game. So, we have e4, which is, I believe, what Steinitz has played with white every single game. With e5, knight f3, knight c6, we have another Ruy Lopez, another Berlin, we have castles, we have this opening once more. But here, instead of the usual d4, we have queen e2 here, which just builds up quite a bit of pressure on the e-file. There's no immediate danger, but there's quite a bit of pressure on the e-file, and so it could be scary, especially if you're playing that 1800, and if there was like even that air of an attack, it was like, oh no, I've lost. So we have bishop e6, we have d3, we have knight f5, just going for knight d4 probably, also just taking a nice space for the knight here. We have knight d2, we have castles, we have c3, which I believe is preventing knight d4 and also building up for d4 personally for white. We have rook e8, just kind of in the future looking to compete for control of the e-file. With knight e4, taking very nice squares for these knights. The white knights look very, very nice in this position. However, the engine doesn't care about that, but we have queen d5, which is a slight inaccuracy. The engine suggests f6 here. But as we know, Zukertort was a future seer and a watcher of Benjamin Feingold, so he would never have played f6. We have queen d5, bishop f4, which just defends this knight, also develops the bishop at the same time. We have rook d8, building up some pressure on this pawn here, though as long as the knight doesn't move, this pawn will never hang. But we have d4, preventing that pawn from ever hanging and defending this knight. We have knight d6, trying to trade off this knight. We have knight c5, pressuring the b7 pawn, also just a very nice outpost for the knight, maybe wanting to trade on e6. We have bishop c8, defending the b7 pawn and avoiding the knight for bishop trade. We have knight d3. Retreating with the knight, which the computer considers an inaccuracy, and frankly I don't understand it either. Maybe he's going for knight b4. I don't see why you would retreat with knight. c5 is a very good square to put it on until b6 is played. I don't think you should retreat the knight. But we have f6 kicking this knight out. We have knight b4 attacking the queen, so a little bit of danger levels. Wilhelm Steinitz, big fan of Gotham chess, of course. Then we have queen b5, offering a queen trade, and Steinitz accepts. We have takes with the knight to avoid a very weak pawn on the b5 square. We have knight e to d3, taking control of the e-file, opening up the rook to put some more pressure on the e-file. With a4, kicking the knight off of b5. We have knight back to d6. a5, just taking a bunch of space on the queen side. We have knight back to b5. a6, just undermining the integrity of the pawn structure here. The only move that doesn't result in a losing position for black here is bishop takes d3. Zukertort finds it, because again, he's a future seer. So we have knight takes d3, b6. Now this pawn is always going to be an annoyance because it's very close to promotion and the a7 pawn can't move. So the a6 pawn is very nice, but it could become a weakness in the future since it's somewhat hard to defend. We have rook e3, looking to double up on the e-file. King f7, preemptively defending the bishop from that double dot. With rook a1, rook d7, which is adding more defenders than necessary to this, and also self-pinning, basically, for no reason, which is why the engine says it's a mistake, because it is. Rook d7 doesn't make sense here. The bishop's already defended twice, you're self-pinning. I mean, the engine suggests c5 here, which is a fair move. D takes c5, b takes c5, and yeah, I mean, this is a pretty okay position for black, but rook d7 is just a terrible move. With knight b4 going after the c6 pawn, and you cannot defend that pawn. g5 is played, a little bit of danger levels, kicking the bishop back to g3, then f5 is played, basically trying to scare white out of taking this pawn by saying, well, if you take the pawn, your bishop's trapped. But we have f4, preventing f4 from being played by black. We have c5, attacking the knight. We have knight c6, putting some more pressure on this bishop. C takes d4, c takes d4, and king f8. We have rook e5, attacking this pawn knight. With knight takes d4, with knight takes d4, rook takes d4. We have rook takes f5 check, king g7, f takes g5, and says that rook takes g5 is better here, but I understand f takes g5 because it opens up the bishop. It opens up the bishop's attack on c7 here, so it makes sense as a move to play. And you feel a bit more sophisticated playing it also. We have bishop c5, it pulls out a brilliancy with the rook takes c5. Idea being that if b takes c5, this rook just hangs up a bishop and pawn, but yeah, almost a rook worth of material. Also the idea being that after what was played in the game, which is rook takes e1 check, bishop takes e1, b takes c5, bishop c3, pins the rook to the king. So after king g6, bishop takes g4, you have a winning king and pawn endgame. Because you're up a pawn in this position, pawn is very well defended, so we just have these guys play out the king and pawn endgame. This is pretty easy. Obviously Steinitz understands the basic concept of opposition here. We have c5, which does create some kind of scary situation, but we have b3 just preventing c4 from happening, king e4, king d3, preventing the king from coming to e4 here, also preventing c4 another time from being played. We have king f4, and we have b4 here. Point being that if c takes b4 takes, this pawn is going to be lost, and then bad stuff is going to happen. So let's say we have this, for instance, we have g3 here. The king cannot take this pawn because then it cannot stop this from happening. So it doesn't. And if instead of that you play b3, you get king c3 here. This pawn will be won. The king can never take this pawn, so it can never take any of these pawns. The white king is just going to run around and pick up all the pawns, and black is just going to have a very bad time. So yeah, that's the game. Steinitz, after being down 3 points after the first 5 games of the match, winds up 2 points after game 12. So, I mean, he's really, the venue change helped him a lot. Maybe he got like, I don't know, his coke fix in St. Louis or something. But yeah, that's this game. Did like the video? Do like the video. If you did hate the video, do dislike the video. If you did have a comment to leave, do leave a comment. If you did have a subscription to give, do leave a subscription. If you have money, you can't give me that money. That's not a feature that I have on my YouTube channel yet, but you could, you know, like, you could declare an intent, and I would be very flattered. So yeah, That's it for me today. So goodbye.